What's up, guys? Welcome to Blue Presents podcast where I discuss all things music. And today on my show, I have Ian Urquhart on my show, man. And man, we talk about everything from content creation to, bands that really inspire him. Him being a part of the Saving Vice team. And if you haven't checked that band out, really check them out. They're a really great metalcore band. But also, you get to hear the passion and fire this kid has for what he does. And man, it's such a positive episode, and I think this is an episode we all need, especially with everything that's going on in the world and the movements that are going on right now. It's a nice episode to hear some real positivity, man, and this kid is so fired up about what he does and how he does it, man. I love the energy that he brought to this interview, man. And it just was really, really good to have a conversation with someone and also get to discuss a different side of music that you don't really think about, the content creation, music videos, photographs, and stuff like that. And it's a really kick-ass show. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And remember, if you'd like to be a guest on my show, or you'd like, have some show ideas for me, and you want to reach out to me, or hell, you just want to tell me, hey, man, you're doing a great job, or, you suck. It doesn't really matter, man. You guys can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Presents a Podcast, as well as you can reach out to me on Twitter at Podcast the Blue, man. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. What's up, guys? Welcome to Blue Presents a podcast where I discuss all things music. And today on my show, I am joined by Ian. I'm going to get this right. Urquhart.
Yes.
All right.
Good job. Good
Nailed
job.
it. Nailed
Pleasure
it.
to be here. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely.
This is the first time I'm talking with you, Ian, and I appreciate you. So we're going to start with my very first question I start every show with. What are your top 5 artists?
Oh, man. Oh, that's tough. All right. Let's go. All right. So first of all, if I had to put myself in a bucket of music that I preferably like to listen to on a daily basis, I am a metalcore fan at heart. Mm-hmm. But I am open to other genres. My playlists are very diverse. But if there's 5 artists probably that I listen to consistently, mm-hmm. In no order. It's just kind of just like on some playlists that I have.
Okay.
Preferably at the moment for the past couple of years, my favorite metalcore band to this day is Architects. Mm-hmm. They are my number one favorite bands, kind of like just teamwork, business, how they go about their mm-hmm. how they go about their touring is just they're like top tier to me. So mm-hmm. I kind of just like look up to them. Mm-hmm. And then I'm gonna have to follow up that with Currents out of Connecticut. Okay. They're another huge band of mine that I love to listen to, and I've actually been able to see them live a handful of times. And if you're into metalcore and mm-hmm. you want to see a live show, Currents is that.
Definitely. I second that.
And I'm also a huge Fit for a King fan. Fit for a King and Currents kind of go hand in hand a bit. They've toured a couple of times, mm-hmm. and I've seen Fit for a King a handful of times. They're just brutally heavy band, and I'm very excited for their album coming out and new songs coming out in the near future. Another big band that they're kind of like getting onto the mainstream level now, but the reason why I like them so much is because they spent so many years grinding to get to the point of where they're at right now that they deserve every single ounce of respect that they have been given by anybody else, and that is Motionless in White. Okay. They're just I've really come to grow and enjoy their sound, and just mm-hmm. I've seen them live a couple of times recently too, and their like live performance and their presentation is just top notch and professional. It's real. It's really something to strive for. Mm-hmm. And then my dark horse pick as of probably the last 6 months. This is very strange. It took a lot out of me to really kind of like mm-hmm. understand this concept, but I have really, really been digging the new Falling in Reverse. Okay. It's a very different shift from their previous directions with mm-hmm. how they recorded and the songs that they would come out with. Mm-hmm. But their new stuff like Popular Monster, Losing My Life, Drugs, it's just those tracks have just been absolute bangers and productions. Mm-hmm. And I've just been a huge fan of them. And I have some silent, some sixth picks in there that I gotta like honorable mentions gotta throw in there. I'm also big bands that are in my life that are currently making a very big impression on me are my boys in Saving Vice out of Vermont and Massachusetts, and Kingsman out of Rhode Island and Massachusetts. And those bands all together, if for some reason they all went on tour, that'd be the greatest tour ever. But that's where I'm coming from.
No, nothing wrong with that. I'm going to tell you a story real quick before we move on. I drove 3.5 hours from Jacksonville, Florida to Orlando to be one of 4 people in a room to watch Motionless in White in 2009. And they ended up being the headlining band, unfortunately, because the band Of Machines, which would go on later to be Woe Is Me and then Issues, were shooting a video that day. And between the 4 of us, and I at that time was all over their When Destruction Met Love EP. I was so all over it, and I fucking went absolutely apeshit. And they put on a kick-ass show for us and the other 3 people that were in the room. It was
That's
badass.
what it's about, man. That's so cool. I love stories like that.
No, it was such a fun deal. It was me, my friend Dylan Ponce. Shout out Dylan. We drove from Jacksonville, Florida, all the way to Orlando to go watch them, and I felt so sad because it was a pretty decent sized venue, and there was just 4 of us, but we had a hell of a time, man.
That's awesome. Hey, you got to play like there's 1,000 people in the room when there's 5, right? You know, it's just kind of that's kind of the way the band's got to learn to get to that level, and it's enlightening, and it's awesome to hear that they even gave off such a performance that. That's
some of the passion I love about music. You're right. It's about killing it, whether there's 4 people or there's wall to wall kids wrecking the pit and whatnot. So hell yeah, man! I love the passion. I hear it coming through you. It's so awesome. So. My podcast is, pretty much we talk about the journey into music. For you do photography and video, man. So how did that get started for you? How did you get into that?
So I got into photography first. The video side of things kind of came along later in the process. And I'm still myself very early in the process of, say, a career. But with regards to getting into both the photo and video world, the photo part came first. Probably back in 2015, I got my first camera, which was very much just kind of like rolling around the neighborhood and taking some photos and trying to get better at it. And I had social media at that point. I didn't really put too much effort into it per se. It was just kind of one of those things that I knew that I needed to have in order to expose myself to different photographers and different creators, and to kind of put my own stuff out there to see if I was kind of like, fitting in with the rest of the group. Yeah. And when I was on Instagram one day when I started getting into photography, I was also at that point I was a big concert goer, so I was kind of searching through the hashtags of like, I wonder if I'm curious if there's like a hashtag where I can find concert photography or like music photography. Yeah. And so I started looking that up, and I tried to like narrow it down because at that point I was somewhat local to the Massachusetts area. For my entire life, I've always been outside of Boston, at least an hour. So I targeted the hashtags towards like Boston concert photography. Okay. And I actually started to see a lot of live photos from photographers that at that point seemed that they were like right up in front. They were front row. They got the best seat in the house, and they were taking photos. And one of the first photographers that I came in contact with, his name is called Richard Knowles. And still to this day, he's around the Massachusetts, Rhode Island area. Before the whole COVID-19 pandemic happened, he was out and about. He's been on the road with Don Broco before, so he's up there. And I like reached out to him and I said like, hey man, your stuff is awesome. Like I'm seeing concert photos left and right from you. It's just like, how do I get into that? And he gave me some pretty good tips on how to start to get into the concert photography world of things. And I still to this day, I'm really good friends with him. I see him at shows quite frequently. solid guy, and he gave me a bunch of tips to start getting into the concert photography world of things. And I started shooting shows for small publications that are online that would essentially reach out to publicists that were working with the bands. And if the bands were allowing media sources to go to their shows and shoot their shows for them, they would provide them a photo pass.
Oh, wow.
And so I started working with this smaller online production called Monkey Goose Magazine. And my first show ever was in Burlington, Vermont. And it was for a band called Judah and the Lion. And they're a bit of like an indie pop, kind of like similar to 21 Pilots.
Okay.
They're kind of like a band like that. And all I knew is that I walked up to the will call. I gave them my license and I said I'm a photographer, and they gave me my photo pass. And the next thing I knew, I was up front. I had my camera in my hand. I kind of knew what I was doing, and I tossed myself into the deep end. And after that night, I started looking at the photos afterwards, after like the following days, and I was hooked. And it was one of those things where it's just like you are documenting somebody who has dedicated their life to putting their art form in music, and you have the privilege as a photographer to be there, and to be able to capture that moment for yourself, for the publication, and for the band too, if they decide to use it. And so that was probably in 2017 was my first concert ever. And since then, it's just been a consistent grind and progression forward in that art and that field. And I've never really looked back since, and it's been awesome.
Man, that passion, to hear what you sound like right now, the giddiness, you can still, it's almost like you can still visualize doing that first show. And that's so amazing that, you have that passion for this, man, and you kind of started jumping into my next question with, what videographers or photographers have really inspired you. And it sounds like you found one that kind of gave you some information and some guidance. What are some, other videographers or photographers that have inspired you to keep doing it?
Oh man, yeah, there's a handful. And without through the New England scene, there's a lot of people that I've been able to connect with that have just shown incredible amounts of talent and passion for what they do. And one big thing that, before I get into names and before I get into people that have really kind of been an influence on me, is I think there might be some kind of perception with regards to concerts in general, and that anybody who works for a concert, this big production, the lights, the sounds, the fireworks, people kind of maybe tie those experiences with, man, there's a lot of money in this. There's a lot of money with photographers, with videographers, and starting out, that is just not the case. You are very much kind of similar to what your story said earlier. You're driving 2.5-3 hours to a place to show up, to shoot a show for free because you love it. And if you can turn it into a career at some point, that's awesome. And I commend anybody who's done that. Yeah. And so still to this day, probably the photographer that I look up the most to is Richard Knowles. He is the top tier dude that I've been able to communicate with on multiple occasions. And he's just consistently shown passion and willingness to learn and to have conversations and not let egos get in the way. And he's just been a very positive force and a positive source for me with regards to the photo world of things. I've never felt one bit of jealousy or resentment or anything like that. He's always been helpful. He's always been up to have a conversation. So, and he's incredibly talented, which is just an overall awesome package.
Shout out to Rich.
His Instagram is Photo Flash, Photo Flash. I'm pretty sure there's some numbers at the end, but if you look up Instagram Photo Flash, he's got a big beard, always wearing shades. He's an awesome dude.
Okay.
So with regards to photo, I would say he's still probably the biggest influence for me, but hands down, the biggest influence for the video world of things, and this is something that I've kind of had a hard time trying to find, with regards to fellow creators, is somebody who is just so willing to help, so willing to have conversations and to kind of show you the ins and outs of some details with regards to workflows, with regards to editing, with regards to how you shoot, what you shoot, when you shoot. And his name is Christian Lawrence, and he is a videographer based out of Brooklyn, New York. And he's worked with so many. He was on the most recent, or he was on one of the most recent Asking Alexandria tours.
Okay. Doing big things.
I believe it's gonna be really bad if I mess this up. I believe the band was called Seconds to Midnight. They were on tour with Asking, and he was out there. He's just consistently kills it. He's one of the most humble people I've ever met.
Yeah.
And the products that he's able to pump out is just so professional, and he's making some personal moves for himself, and he's just always down to have a conversation. He's always down to talk shop. He's always down to like talk strategy, and just overall, like, that's just so nice to have, because you do kind of, in every field, it doesn't necessarily need to be the photography or videography worlds. You run into people that do kind of like get some egos, and they kind of like focus on themselves, or their goals are different than other people's goals.
Of course.
And that kind of translates accidentally into resentment towards other people, which isn't really like the purpose, but it's just how it comes off. But Christian and Richard, they've never shown that to me at all.
Wow.
They could go on a world tour with like Iron Maiden, and they would come back as if they never did it, and we would like either grab a coffee or talk about photo or video world of anything. And it's just like, those are the kind of people that I really like to focus my attention around.
It's the whole ideal that some people get into particular fields because of competition, and I got to think there's, and it's no disrespect to the field, there's thousands upon thousands, if not millions, of people who do or are trying to do similar things, and some people feel like they need to knock people down a peg instead of realizing, if I can help the next man come up, that helps me come up, because you never know. There's always that saying, you never know who you might be working for next.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So if you keep that cycle of give and take, or, hey man, can I show you something? Hey man, can you show me something? You give and take. And then also on top of that, that just shows that it doesn't matter how much bigger you become or get to enjoy bigger success. You don't let it mold you by saying, well, I'm better than you because XYZ, you know what I'm saying? And that the passion that I'm hearing from you talking about your relationship with these two gentlemen just kind of speaks to the fact that they're affecting you in the most of positive ways, and that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's almost quite literally the same exact things as bands coming up.
Yeah, for real.
You have bands that are putting in the grind, they're putting in the work, trying to playing those shows with like 5 to 10 people there for a couple of years. But when you play those shows, when you tour with bands that are doing the same grind, you build those connections. And when you don't have those connections meet with basically coworkers at that point, you're in the same field, you're just working for different businesses. When you don't have that connection, it kind of deters you away from wanting to have further conversations with them and kind of like furthering that connection. And when people really kind of stick your neck out for you when they don't need to, that stuff to me really resonates and it sits with me in a very strong way. And that's exactly what I've gotten from both Richard Knowles and Christian Lawrence. And I foresee me being good friends with them for quite some time.
Yeah,
and I've just forever been thankful for all the knowledge that they've been able to share.
Once again, that's awesome. That's, like I said, it continues to keep, they level up, you level up, you know what I'm saying? And in the end, it's success all around, as opposed to just, I'm going to stick to myself and not tell you where I've gotten or how I've gotten. And that's the type of stuff that, like when I first started talking about wanting to do a podcast, I had no clue about recording. I'd been in bands for years. You know, I sang in multiple bands. And even when I moved back up here from Florida, I was in multiple bands here.
Awesome.
And then I just kind of was like talking about the whole podcasting thing. And I had to talk to two friends who have done podcasts before. One who was a podcast that I really, really enjoyed. And I just kind of was just like, I was concerned about myself and my personality and how I would do. And he just kind of put it out there for me. And then, you know, the other thing was I have an inspiring, you know, spouse who tells me, you know, hey, give it a try. What's the worst that could happen? And here I am now in your, you know, I'm on my like 27th, 28th episode now of doing this podcast. And I feel like every time I'm going, I'm getting better and better and better. But it's because I have those connections with these people that can give me a little bit of tidbits and give me some information. Hell, I'm even using my friend Brandon to kind of give me some more information on the recording side to give a better sound for my podcast, man. And that's the thing we need in this life, especially right now with as crazy as the world is, man. We need some goddamn positivity and some togetherness for real.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah, man. So with that being said, you know, let's start talking about like the videographer side of it, because I did watch your, Saving Vice videos. I've seen what you've done with past guest on here, Devin To Embers video. How does that project start for you with working with the artists? More times than not, are you developing the concepts yourself, or are you being presented with a concept that you modify to kind of make, you know, sense of?
So, with regards to the two artists that you just mentioned, I'll start with Devin To Embers. So Devin is a good friend of my friend Matt Long, who he's the one of the lead vocalists in a band called The Worst of Us out of Rhode Island, and Rhode Island, Massachusetts. Some of the members are kind of split. But when I worked with Devin, I did not know Devin beforehand. So that experience was very much like Devin reached out to me and said like, hey, so I got referred to you by my friend Matt, and he said that you do video work. And so that's how the conversation started with Devin and I. And so with that whole process, it was very much a creative process of like, all right, let's hear what the idea is, and let's try to come to a middle ground to see how we can get that done. And one thing that I have unfortunately seen, and one thing that I've heard from many people that have worked with other videographers or just creators in general. Creators, I feel like sometimes they kind of, as like I'm from Irish descent, so my dad would say this phrase called, they would always get their Irish up, which is basically just like, if something doesn't go their way, they kind of stand their ground and they don't necessarily give or budge or like give or take and kind of give that extra push to let somebody else talk. And so in a creative field, that doesn't exist. That doesn't happen. Like if you're getting hired by somebody else to create something, unless they literally reach out to you and say, hey, your style is cool, I like what you did with X, Y, and Z. Here's my song. I want a video for it. You have complete creative control. I will not dispute a single thing or a single detail or a single turn that you make on this video. It's all yours. Yeah. That rarely happens. And of course. Like how it usually goes is that an artist like approaches any creative and they have an idea and they talk to you about this idea. And if you're comfortable with it, you can start to collaborate and get like a good strategy down on how you want to go about it. And that is exactly how Devin and I from Devin To Embers came out with his most recent music video. And how that went was, you know, like Devin and I had our separate conversations. We decided, you know, when we were going to shoot, how we were going to shoot it, where we were going to shoot it, the concept, the idea, all that. We had that all planned out well beforehand, before the shoot date. And that creative process continued on after the shoot date. As I was editing the video, I would keep my communication as clear as I possibly could to show him, a client, a soon-to-be and now a very good friend of mine, that like I'm keeping a clear communication. Like I'm not, you know, big leaguing anybody here because I'm still in the beginning stages of all this and I don't know any better than he does. And having that ability to just have a conversation and feel comfortable about it, because any creative wanting to put something out on YouTube, which gets billions of views per week, that is a level of vulnerability that not a lot of people have. And so when you approach somebody who has the ability to create an idea or put an idea onto a screen, you're not going to control that. You want to have a conversation. You want to try to make it as collaborative as possible. And so that's exactly what Devin and I did with regards to his most recent music video. And it went great. You know, like Devin and I, we come from like different views on different things, but it doesn't matter because music is the same language as everybody.
Oh yeah.
And so that's how I look at it. It's like, you can believe in whatever, you can say whatever you want, you know, don't hurt anybody, don't put anybody down, but if you just have a different perspective, who gives a shit? You know, that's your thing. Exactly. But if you have an idea and I can help you create that idea onto a visual platform, I'm all about it. And so that's how the whole process went with Devin, and still to this day we're still working together, working on some cool stuff currently, and it's great. And so with regards to the other band that you mentioned, Saving Vice, I actually met Saving Vice when I was living in Vermont, very shortly after my very first concert content creating experience ever, as I was mentioning before with Judah and the Lion. Saving Vice was playing at a show in Burlington, Vermont, and I very much reached out to them, asking if I could get a photo pass for them, and I was able to get that photo pass and show up to the show, shoot some content for them, passed it along after the show was done, and that was, 2016, 2017, and I have. I don't like to take sole ownership of every piece of content that Saving Vice has coming out, because that is definitely not true. However, with regards to the weekly, services and like the day-to-day conversations of content that comes out from the Saving Vice team, I am the go-to person for that band that gets the majority of their photo content done, the majority of their video content done. I'm their tour guy. So that is completely different example, because I'm boys with these guys, and like I'm friends with them. And one thing that is very important to me is that nobody gets taken advantage of, and never in one experience ever have I ever felt taken advantage of by anybody at the team of Saving Vice. We are all collaborative. We all notice our own strengths and our own weaknesses. But one thing that Saving Vice and the team of Saving Vice does with me and everybody else along that's involved is that we praise each other when we do something right. But if there's something that involves improvement, we're the first people to call it out.
No, for real. I like that. I like some of the things that I've seen that you've done with them, and you are like all over their social media. By the way, I just like literally today, this is the first time I heard them, and instantly was like, yo, I'm following them on everything. Especially I just heard that new Evanescence cover, which was pretty fucking dope, man. It was really cool.
We've been sitting on that for a while.
Yeah, man.
I'm stoked to have like the guys come out with all of that. But it's like I don't take it for granted a single day. You know, like just to your point that you said earlier, there's hundreds and thousands of incredibly talented content creators out there in the world, and every single one of them deserves recognition. For real. And I having the ability to work so closely with a team that not only is talented but devoted and dedicated to making this their career is almost it's very rare to find, I kind of feel. And with that, you get a certain personality, you get a certain work ethic, you get a certain workflow, and it's very much like going to work. When you work with a team, you go to work. You have your coworkers that bounce ideas off of you. You have conversations. You have likes. You have dislikes. You have arguments. You have everything. It's like a family. And it's been something that I have been cherishing for the past basically 2 to 3 years now, and they have given me a platform to learn, to fail, to get better at. And I've just been forever grateful for it. And we're still rolling, you know, although the COVID pandemic is definitely putting a screeching halt on anything show related.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of stuff happening that involves the team, that involves content, that involves music. And it's an honor to be a part of. And I'm just forever grateful to have the opportunity that I have there. And with anybody else that I work with, it's all very special every time.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Like I said, it's this, you know, it's like you said, it's a team, man. You guys are working together to kind of elevate each one another, you know, you with your videography and your photography, them with their music, their appearance, and how they appear online and stuff like that. And you've shot some really, really great videos. I watched both videos that you have up on your website, and they're so well done. The live performance was fucking amazing, to the one where you had more visuals, which was really, really well done. So in that being said, man, have you ever been asked to do something, or maybe something you couldn't necessarily pull off, or maybe something, like you said before, something you didn't feel comfortable with when it comes to doing that kind of thing?
Oh, that's a great question. I like to think that I put myself in positions where I can try to avoid that.
Yeah.
And if for some reason a job opportunity like that came my way, I'm never one to not ask questions. Like, I'll ask 1,000 questions to anybody to make sure that I get something like clarified or correct. And so by doing that and having that strategy, I try to like make sure that I never put myself in a position where I was little in over my head.
Yeah.
And so I think the only experience, and it came out well, if I were to do it again, which I think I will do it again at some point, the only experience that I can think of at this point that I agreed to do something that I had an idea on how it was going to go, but after it was done, I immediately had not necessarily regrets, but second thoughts on how I would have gone about it differently.
Okay.
It was the live performance video for the song Before I Go by Saving Vice. That was held in Burlington, Vermont, ironically enough, and thankfully enough, the week before COVID-19 really started to make an impact on the music industry, where tours started to get shut down, and like shows started to get canceled, and tours started to get canceled, and festivals started to get canceled. Just before that, we had a show up in Burlington, Vermont, where it was a beautiful show. We sold over 300 plus tickets. It was sold out. Wow. Like, the place was packed. It was just a very memorable night, and I was given the responsibility for recording a live music video for the song Before I Go. And so part of that night, I was also going to be covering the photo side of Saving Vice, which I was able to do just fine. But the video part, I never recorded a live music video before. You know, being kind of like, you know, my touring experience isn't very experienced, I guess would be the best way to put it. Like, I haven't really had too many big tours, but I have gone on, you know, a handful of like week and a half runs here, 2-week runs here. So the live performance and the live recording of a show it wasn't foreign to me. Like, I would create recap videos and like tour recap videos and all that whenever I would go out, and I knew what I was doing. Yeah. But for a live video, I had an idea in my head on how I was going to go about it, and it just didn't fully come to the surface. I got it all done, but it was probably one of the biggest learning experiences that I've had as a content creator, because every time I do something different, which to that point I never put together a live music video before. It was very much a learning experience, and I know what to do differently going forward. But more or less, throughout that evening, I learned very quickly that I needed more people to help out. I needed more angles. I needed different shots. Like when you're shooting a show, you're primarily focused on the production, which Saving Vice had an incredible production for that night. They had they had LED backlit screens, they had lights, they had strobes, they had everything. So it was very attractive, and there was a lot of people there. But for an example, one thing that you, as a creator, when you're making a live performance video, one thing that you kind of forget to record and to film are the fans.
Okay.
Because the fans are there. The fans are like experiencing that moment. And I was so fixated on the band and like getting the right angles on certain performance shots that like after the show was done, I realized I did not have enough fan shots. And so with experiences like that, I knew what I was doing, but it wasn't until in the moment and after the fact when I was trying to put everything together that I quickly realized that, you know what, had I known this, I would have gone about it differently.
And that's crazy to hear you say that, man, because that's one of the videos I watched and I was like, holy shit, wow, this is really, really fucking good. But now that I think back on it, it was like, yeah, there probably wasn't. And you do have, and the crazy part is you do have a couple scenes where it's the actual live footage and you hear the fucking crowd sound off with these guys. And you're like, oh shit, these guys are some big deals where they're from, man, for real. And it gave like it was a great fucking performance on their part and the video looked good. But now that I think back on it, I was like, yo, he is right. He actually, that maybe that was something, different. But you're right, man. You learned from that experience. And me as a person who knew nothing about the situation, I thought you did a great job. You know what I'm saying? Like, you did an awesome job, for real.
Yeah, no, it's like and this is kind of like a quick sidebar onto kind of like that whole conversation. One of the quotes that I remember watching from, because I was mentioning them before, how Architects is kind of like one of my favorite bands of all time. They came out with a documentary called Holy Ghost. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to watch it.
No, I have not.
But it's up on YouTube. It's amazing. I recommend anybody to watch it. It's about their performance at Alexandra Palace where they sold out like 10,000 people. It was awesome.
Wow.
But there was a quote in that documentary, and I might be paraphrasing here, but they were talking about their milestones, how their guitarist Tom, he passed away a couple of years ago, and how they were talking about in the documentary how Tom wouldn't comprehend these shows that Architects like went through this tragedy and then continued on and carried on to play these massive shows. And they were talking about how like they played Brixton Academy, which is like one of the most profound venues over in like Europe.
Yeah.
And how it was just a consistent, like humbling experience. It was like, all right, we played Brixton. Awesome. Now let's play Alley Pally. All right, we played Alley Pally. What's next?
Slowly
Wembley.
Checking off the checklist of places to play,
Right. And so like I try to keep the same aspect of like if I do something that is really impressive in my opinion and just from like my checklist of things that I've been able to do throughout my time as a content creator, I never remain complacent.
Yeah.
Like and nothing is ever perfect. There's always things to work on.
Of course.
And that was one of the first things that became very clear to me after the Saving Vice show as a content creator. The show was perfect. The show went on great. But for me and my job, there were a handful of things from that show that I took away from it that I was like, all right, if I'm going to be doing this on a consistently like daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, I need to get better at A, B, and C.
Exactly.
And so that whole show was it was a great time, but it was a learning experience at the same time. And so going forward, I got it drilled in my head now, and I think everybody is looking forward to the next opportunity where they can go to a concert,
of course,
and do what they love. And to me, that's creating content and enjoying the show. So when that day happens, I'll be very happy.
No, for real. I mean, like, and like you said, it's a learning process, and it's like it not only does it apply to what you're doing, you know, in creating content, it applies to just life itself, man. If we're not trying to figure out, you know, how we could have handled the situation or, you know, things better, you know, to open ourselves up for growth, man. And that's what it sounds like, man. It sounds like you're opening yourself up to growth as not only just, you know, a content provider, but as well as, you know, just being a person and realizing, man, you know, there's some things I definitely need to work on. And not staying complacent is it's an awesome thing to have, man. You know, I feel that in my life now, you know, like a few years ago, I wouldn't say I was complacent. I was just trying to dig myself out of certain places. And now that I'm in probably, I wouldn't say the most this is probably the most secure I've ever felt in my life. You know, I've got particular things in hand, but there's still that part of me. There's more to go. There's things to do. There's further things to, you know what I'm saying? And we continue to keep doing that, man. That's an awesome thing for you to say that. Now, we're going to talk about one of your videos, man, because visually to me, it was amazing. And I'm going to have a follow-up question after I'm done. So in the video for No Soul, Wish Ender, man, which is a great, first of all, it's a great fucking song. I don't know. Do you know where those guys are? Where are they from?
They're based out of Vermont.
Man, they're badass. I was not expecting the sound that came out when the video started, man. It was fucking heavy. And then the dude fucking sings. Holy shit. Oh, it was fucking amazing, man. But in that video, man, your visuals were fucking stunning. Horror movie-esque, okay? That's how I have to describe it, okay? Which was very inspiring. So, one, who's the person getting waterboarded with blood, okay? And how difficult was it to shoot that scene?
Oh man! All right, so that we do it. So first of all, that was Storm. He's the bassist. Storm was the one getting waterboarded, and you know, we were very, very cautious. We had a bunch of conversations before that shoot even happened, because that is certainly nothing to mess around with, and
for sure,
we wanted to make sure everybody was like comfortable, and that like everybody was involved with like the art form of it, and everybody was on board. And so that concept actually did not originate from me. That was another example of let's see, it was Will and it was Jamothy, who Will is one of the guitarists, and Jamothy, James, is the lead vocalist. Okay. And we had consistent conversations about what they wanted for the B-roll shots. Yeah. And at first, that was probably the first time ever where I was given a job opportunity and the word waterboarding came up, and my immediate response was kind of just like, I mean, let's talk about this a little more to see kind of like where we're going with it. And so they went on to like further explain like the meaning behind it, and how they were going to do it, and how it was going to be orchestrated and put together. And we came up with a very professional and safe way to get it done. Yeah. And we were actually in a house from one of the members of the band. They were able to let us use the house and the bathroom that we were recording those scenes in. And essentially, it's a movie trick. I haven't been a part of any movie sets, but I've been on set for a handful of fairly big production music videos. And it was fake blood that was being used, which was basically just like this Amazon fake blood that you can buy that you give like a chocolate flavor to. So it's, you know, it was kind of cold that day too, which kind of worked out in our favor because we wanted to make it seem like real blood. Exactly. So we kind of warmed the water up too. So we kind of gave off a little bit of steam. So essentially, like, Storm ended up having warm, steamy, fake blood chased like chocolate, like being poured over his face. And it was like more, it was more or less for like 5 or 6 seconds. He wasn't suffocating. He was very safe. If anything, we just made the bathroom a mess.
Oh.
But that was definitely the last scene for the house, for the bathroom that we were filming in, because if we messed that up, then we would pretty much have to reshoot the next day because everybody would be covered in blood and there'd be stains everywhere.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, fake blood with chocolate flavoring.
Yeah.
And so that was really fun because that was kind of like, all right, we're all safe here. We're not looking to hurt anybody, but we want to make something cool. And everybody was on board. We made sure everybody felt comfortable and safe. And I think it came out pretty cool. I think it came out pretty sweet.
Oh, yeah. No, it definitely did. You did whatever you did, man. The way you shot it to the scenes that you got from it, man, it came out visually. For me, I was sitting there watching the video, and I'm just, just to kind of give you behind the scenes in my podcast, when I'm coming up with questions for people who come on my show, I want to take a look at what you've done. I want to hear some of the things you've done, and with you, a lot of it's visual stuff that you can look at. So this immediately caught me by my eye, and I was like, "Ooh, what was that?" And I had to watch it again just to kind of catch every little visual so I could see it. And I was like, once I got it, I was like, "Oh my god, that looks amazing!" And just how well you did. And like I said, it was horror movie-esque. How
Perfect.
like just amazing it came out, and I was just like, "Wow, this is crazy." You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure you're. You know what I'm saying? Like, you sound like you're early on in it, and you're over here pulling off shots like that just kind of left me like, man, I gotta go watch that again and pick that up and make sure I didn't miss that again. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's the goal. Like my number one thought, no matter what it is, it could be excitement, it could be sadness, it could be like some kind of romantic feeling, it could be some kind of nostalgic feeling.
Yeah.
My goal from like day one, since I've ever made anything visual ever, because it kind of like correlates back to when I first started like really looking deeper into videos, is that if I'm not touched, like emotionally touched or moved while watching something, whether if that's like being left really sad or really happy or like pumped or kind of like slightly depressed after watching something, that to me was like, whoever made that did a really freaking good job.
Yeah.
Because it struck a nerve with somebody and it like made them think twice. It made them like question what they were seeing, making them having to go back and see it again. And so to hear that you had to go back and see it again to kind of like verify what you saw is like hitting the nail on the head.
No, for real. It was I caught it and I was like, wait, what were they doing? And then like you said, you're like, waterboard with blood. What the fuck? You know what I'm saying? It was perfect. All of those guys are amazing. I cannot wait until I work with them again. They're like such great sports. They're so dedicated to their music, and they're all just awesome people to hang out with. And they're gonna be coming out with some music soon, some more music soon, and have them be on your radar. They're gonna definitely make some noise. No, for real. Check those guys out. No Soul, man. Those guys are really, really fucking sick. The sound and the transitions are pretty sick, man. I like those guys. So I've got two more questions before we get out of here, man. The first question that I have before we end this is, and I always do this because I just want to know where your headspace is at, and it kind of gives you an idea of like I hear the passion in you, man. So what are some artists you hope you get to work with in the future? And it doesn't have to be, you can go as lavish as you want to go, you know what I'm saying? Cause I'm still holding out hope that me and Howard do a song. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh man. That's a really good question. And it brings up a conversation that I didn't learn the details about until I started like really getting into working with specifically Saving Vice, because there's just like a team at Saving Vice where everybody's doing a different role and having a different responsibility. And so my naive mindset when I was just starting to like really get into photo and photo work first and video work second, but primarily photo work. When I first started going to a lot of shows, and I'm like, all right, I'm shooting these awesome shows. I'm getting the occasional retweet from the bands when they hype up my work on their Twitter, on their Instagram. Like that's like the best thing ever. It's like an awesome feeling. And like for me personally, when I started seeing stuff like that, I was like, oh man, maybe they're paying attention. Maybe if they're, if they need a content guy, they might reach out.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is true. That like I have heard of like friends of mine who are in the business of like video and photo content related pieces that they supply to bands.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them have been acquired due to like previous content that they've posted, and the bands have reached out and be like, hey, that was dope. Like, let's get you on the road with us.
Exactly.
But one thing that became very clear to me as I started working more with Saving Advice is that each band, it's a business. It's a team.
Mm-hmm.
And not like unless a team member or unless a team, like a band member or a team member is unavailable or they had a falling out with the band, bands just remain so loyal to those who remain loyal to them.
Exactly.
And that is something that I did not realize. So like I'm a huge Architects fan, and I've had the ability and the privilege to be able to like post some stuff on Instagram, post some stuff on Twitter, and get some like retweets by them, and it's awesome. Like it just gets my content out, and I'm glad that they like it enough to be able to share it.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that being said, I never in my life want to take anybody's spot because they've earned that spot. They've put their time into that spot. They did not, get fed with a silver spoon per se to get that spot. They grinded just with that team and that organization and band to get that spot. So
exactly.
But if that wasn't the case, if there was like,
willy-nilly,
like,
exactly.
Like a draft, like a metalcore content creator draft, I would lose my mind if I was able to work with Architects or, stemming back to even my deeper roots with heavy rock and metal. Probably of all time, my favorite band that got me into metal, that got me into the heavier stuff, that it kind of like exposed me to this aggressive, but such an intimate style of music, which is like heavy metalcore. In this case, mainly metal, is Avenged Sevenfold.
Okay.
If I had the opportunity to work with Avenged Sevenfold, I would put my camera down and move on to something else, because that is the top of the tier thing for me. But no, just really anybody, because it's literally like taking on a new hire. Like
for real.
I do not have a lot of touring experience on a full-time scale. I haven't been out on that month-long run or that month-and-a-half-long run yet. I hope to get there at some point. I kind of, when concerts come back, I hope that I can kind of get that stride going again. But when somebody else just takes somebody new out into a team and makes them one of their own, kind of, there's a connection and there's a chemistry that needs to happen. And honestly, anybody who has that mindset and that open-mindedness to be able to take somebody new onto their team and kind of be like, all right, here's the rundown. Here's how we operate. Here's what we're looking for. Can you do that? And if I can say, yes, I can, then the rest is just building friendships.
Yeah, man. And that's a cool, like, an acquaintance of mine, Aaron Berkshire, who's grinded, man. Dude's been doing it for a long time. I remember him.
Aaron is a beast. He's an absolute beast.
He just won Videographer of the Year, man. Congratulations to Aaron, man. And I hope to have him on my show one of these days, man. And I've actually known Aaron since he was 16 years old, and he tried out for a band that I was in to play drums, actually. And then he went on. Nice. Yeah, he went on and formed his own band, Stages, and then they were doing well for a while, and then he transitioned, and if I'm not mistaken, him and his wife are content creators as well. They kind of do their own thing. I believe she does things in the makeup and modeling world and stuff like that, and, obviously he does music. And I think his picture just got picked to be the new cover for the Slaves album, which is coming out.
It's awesome. That's perfect.
It's pretty badass. But, like you said, it's a teamwork. It's a grind. It's a building of friendships and relationships. It's not just, hey, man, we need a photographer, insert photographer A, insert photographer B. It's a understanding of that band and what that band's trying to represent. And that's so cool. And it sounds like, with the guys Saving Vice, man, sounds like if they make it, you're making it. You know what I'm saying? In the sense of, they're going to take you on that ride because they have that developed relationship with you and be like, hey, man, this is our dude. You know what I'm saying? And that's...
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the day where we can have this conversation in maybe like a year or two, where I can be like, you know what, you're right.
Exactly.
So,
no, that's
I'm always pushing for them.
Yeah, no, and that's cool, man. Those guys are I'm like I said, I became a fan. I'm definitely a fan. You might catch me at a couple shows for sure.
Perfect.
So my last question before we close this out, man. Not only are you doing bands, videos, and photography, man, I see you do some wedding stuff, and you're even doing some advertising stuff as well, too. Talk a little bit about that, man. I saw you, I even read some of the reviews for some of the wedding work you've done, man, and people speak so highly of you, man. That's an awesome thing, bro. Like, real shout out, man, that you're not just resting on, okay, I'm gonna make it in the music. You're also doing other things, like weddings and like, product advertisement and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I was, I learned very, very quickly that when I turned my photo and video work into a full-time career, there were areas that I needed to sacrifice. So ironically enough, I used to go shoot shows on behalf of publications quite frequently when I wasn't a full-time content creator. But once the decision was made that I was going to dedicate my passion, which was creating content both in the photo and video world, it came with sacrifices, which meant, this is my livelihood. This is something that I need to pay my bills off of. And this is something that I need to treat myself seriously, because if I don't treat myself seriously, then nobody will treat me seriously.
Exactly.
And so one of the things I got into were weddings, because apart from the financial side of it, because weddings are not cheap, and they are a very good source of income for those who are videographers or photographers. You also, you cannot fake working a wedding. You can't, you can't do it. And if you do fake working a wedding, that doesn't result with good recommendations. That doesn't result with referrals. That doesn't result with just a good overall experience.
Exactly.
And so my first couple of weddings were definitely being tossed in the deep end. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos. I followed a lot of Instagram accounts that kind of gave me ideas on angles and how to do it. But with regards to weddings, until you go through the workflow and the schedule of a wedding, you literally just have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
And one decision that I made personally is I decided to throw myself really in the deep end and not start out as a second shooter. I never worked with anybody else, and it's not an ego thing. It's more or less just I didn't really know where to go.
Exactly.
I had people coming out for me messaging me and contacting me saying hey, your nature photos are really nice, and out of curiosity, do you do weddings?
Yeah.
And so my answer is kind of what I was referencing before. What I was saying before is I'll never agree to something if I'm not confident with it. And I was confident that I could get it done because I was confident in my ability to do enough research to make sure that I could get it done. Okay.
I like that. I like that answer. It's just if I don't know, I'm gonna find out.
Exactly. Yeah. And if it's literally something that it's just straight out of left field and I have no clue, I'm honest with my clients and say look, I'm not necessarily comfortable with doing this, but one thing that I try to do every time, if that happens, which I try to avoid as much as possible, is I give them good references and referrals to people that know what they're doing. And so with that being said, I follow not only full-time freelancers in the photography and videography world, but I also follow freelancers on social media, in other realms, which could be social media influencing, could be advertisers, could be business owners. And one thing that I've learned big time is that you never put all of your eggs in one basket.
No, for real. You got to diversify, man. Especially nowadays.
Exactly. And so, like, the way that I see it, and one of the main reasons why I got into video work was one of the creative side of video work is like nothing like I've ever experienced before. It's, you know, when you're capturing still moments in photography, it's still like that moment is captured forever. You'll forever have that moment. But when you're working with video, you're putting a story together that people experienced one point in their life, and everybody's memory of that night is different compared to yours.
Yeah, for real.
But if you put something together that everybody can watch, they will always remember that memory the same as the other people that watched that video.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the main reasons why I got into video work, and that translated into the wedding world of things, because I started putting wedding memories together in like a cinematic form where people could just watch it over again. Because, you know, there is a place for, like, you know, hearing what people are saying, hearing the speeches, hearing like what the bride is going to say to the groom. Like, that's all part of a certain type of experience that you want to relive. But the way I saw it was like, I love going to movies. So when I watch something, I love watching something that kind of looks and feels like a movie. So that's kind of how I translated into the wedding video world of things. And just on top of that, and some like other product stuff that I've been able to do with other companies, like product photography, product videography, it gives them the ability to advertise their product, and it allows me to build a relationship, a connection with that company. And so it's just like, yeah, if you need like anything wedding related, whether it be photo or video work, like Ian can do it. You know, he does some like product stuff too, like some still photography for products. He can do that. So I just want my name at the end of the day to kind of be tied with a variety of skills.
Yeah, man, multifaceted.
Exactly. So that's kind of what I try to gear towards, and I'm still gearing towards it, and I'm, you know, the pedals to the floor with everything I'm doing. So I'm hoping, crossing fingers, that it all works out and kind of keep it on the path that I'm on.
No, man, and like I said, it's just amazing to hear your passion, man. It's just you're so passionate, bro, man, and I hope you get all the success in the world, man. And I appreciate you for coming on the show today, man. You know, you not meeting me, you know, Devin kind of set this up between the both of us, and this was a great eye-opening conversation, man, for real. You provided so much great information, man, and I think that's awesome. And like I said, man, I really hope this continues on the success, man, because you've got the positivity, you've got the motivation, man, and it sounds like you surround yourself with good people, and that's an awesome aspect of what you're doing, man. So before we get out of here, man, we got to plug your social medias, man. People got to know where to find you, man. All right, man, and we're going to start with your website at IanUrquhart.com, Urquhart Productions on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Ian_Urquhart. And check him out, man. Believe me, check out his portfolio on his website and see some of the things he's done, man. You've got a wide variety of things, and like I said, man, your positivity and your energy is awesome, man, and I really hope it leads to great success for you, brother.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me on. It was a pleasure to talk tonight. It's like I could go on for hours about music-related stuff. So
we're about an hour, man. We're about an hour into this.
Beautiful. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on. And I hope that we have another opportunity in the future to have the same conversation.
Hell yeah, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, man.